Minister has a disturbing track record of putting the partisan interests of the Liberal Party ahead of transparency and protecting our democracy and national security. Isn't the real reason the Prime Minister won't release the names because some or all of these compromised MPs happen to be Liberals?
Mr. Chair, through you, I congratulate Mr. Cooper on the clip you probably just tried to get for social media. The simple answer is no.
And that was just a sample of the sniping we saw today at the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. The opposition Conservatives want the government to identify the MPs and senators alleged to have wittingly aided foreign states. The government insists it's all up to law enforcement at this point and argues the opposition is politicizing the issue. Here to parse the politics and the policy is our front bench. Former BC Premier Christy Clark, she's now senior advisor with Bennett Jones, CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair, and Christy Kirkup, national affairs reporter at the Globe and Mail. Welcome to you all. Christy Clark, we're going to start with you on this one. Is Dominic LeBlanc right? Are the Conservatives making this into political theater?
Well, yeah, they are. I mean, that's what oppositions are supposed to do, I think, is make it into political theater. But I think the thing that complicates this for the federal government is that the Prime Minister, took an information that he had from CSIS or the RCMP at the time, which, is about India, and then said, well, we think that there's evidence that the Indian government committed the murder, was behind the murder of the men in Surrey. And, did a terrible impact on our relationship with India, but, they believed that it was true. It was based on information from the RCMP. And now they're saying, well, we can't release the names that are in this report because the information only comes from CSIS and the RCMP, and we're not sure that all of that information can be confirmed. So I do agree they probably shouldn't be releasing this information before they have more evidence of it, before it's all confirmed, before there are potentially charges laid and the RCMP have had a chance to finish their work. But it's sure at odds with the way that they treated the last thing that they felt was conveniently politically convenient to talk about in public. That is the problem that Dominic LeBlanc has to stick handle now. And I think it's a tough position for them to be in.
Yeah, and Tom, LeBlanc has been responding to criticism, saying that it would be irresponsible to release the names. But in your opinion, was it irresponsible to have a report without names?
Well, that's the whole thing. And I'll add to what Christy just said, and I agree completely with what she just said. But I'd add this. It's been more than 18 months since the beginning of the foreign intervention in Canadian elections scandal. And as Steve Maher pointed out in his book, that was sort of the beginning of the disconnect between Trudeau and the average Canadian voter, and when he started to stumble. Why? Because they weren't being transparent. They tried to hand that off to David Johnston. It was a whole mess. Now, Madam Justice Hogue is trying to run a commission of inquiry. They won't even give her access to the cabinet documents that the very same Dominic LeBlanc that we just saw said she would have access to. She doesn't have to quote it publicly, but she certainly has to know what the context was. So the context, talking about that here, is that the average Canadian voter is saying, what's happening? There are people sitting in our parliament, whether in the House of Commons or perhaps in the Senate, who are under the direct influence of foreign governments and trading secrets and undermining our country. There are words for that, and they're very harsh words. Collaboration and frankly, if that is the case, it's traitorous. But we've also got to go back to the 1950s in the United States, when it was sufficient just to put somebody's name on a list, and all of a sudden they were blackballed. So you can't, in a society based on the rule of law, simply start putting names out there unless the appropriate safeguards, which include respecting due process and a police investigation, has taken place. So on that, I feel a certain sympathy for Dominic LeBlanc, because he's trying to do his job properly, respecting those basic tenets of a democracy. But at the same time, it has been more than 18 months during which Trudeau picks and chooses his moments. He scolds President Xi of China over interference, but then won't talk about it. As Christy correctly points out, he opens up the parliamentary session the first day in September to get everybody off his back about the polling. And he has this dramatic moment where he talks about India. Might turn out to be true, but the way it was done has hurt our relationship with one of the two largest countries in the world. Oh, and by the way, China is the largest. So that's the track record of all of this. It's been hiding stuff from Canadians. People don't believe anything the government tells them anymore. So even though the answer in this case is valid, you can't do that in a free and democratic society. Just put out a list of names that's not been tested with true evidence in a contradictory process or a proper analysis. Trudeau's got zero credibility on this, and that's the number one problem.
Yeah, and in the meantime, Christy Kirkup, I mean, you and I both on Parliament Hill, speculation has been running rampant up there. And you know, the question to a lot of MPs has been, you're in a caucus room now. Are you looking over your shoulder or, you know, to one side and the other and saying, hey, is it you or is it you?
And I thought it was interesting outside of the Liberal caucus this week when reporters were asking those questions, and some of the MPs were saying, well, no, we're not asking those questions. And I thought, what? How could that be, right? Because now we have this bombshell report that has really consumed so much political oxygen, as it should, frankly, on Parliament Hill. This is shocking findings from this committee putting forward this report. And now what? Now it is up to, according to the government, the RCMP to determine next steps. The RCMP has confirmed that it is aware of this report. That's essentially all that the National Police Force is saying at this point. But we saw that David McGuinty, of course, who is the chair of the committee, coming out and talking about the fact that those MPs on the committee are bound by the Security of Information Act. That is extremely serious, saying that, you know, MPs could be prosecuted if they were to reveal what they know. So, you know, someone like McGuinty trying to make the case that, again, this will be up to law enforcement, that they put forward a very careful report, they went as far as they could, and they're not going to say anything more. I think fundamentally, though, to Tom's point, there is this credibility issue that the Trudeau government has been struggling with now for more than a year. And I think that this easily feeds into that. The opposition saying that you know, the government should be providing more information. And frankly, I think they know that Canadians are questioning the credibility of this government at this particular juncture. Yeah,
and Christy Clark, one of the things that I noticed in a lot of the pushback from this government to the Conservatives has essentially been, look, we have offered Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservatives, to come into the tent to look at the documents. He just has to agree to that security clearance. The thing that Poilievre has always pushed back against has been, yeah, but then I can't talk about it. And certainly he doesn't want to give away that opportunity in question period. So do you think that the Liberals have a bit of a point here in basically saying, well, look, you can lob all the criticism you want at us, but the seriousness of it is in the details of this report, and you don't want to look at it?
Yeah, I think they have a point. I mean, of course, he's the leader of the opposition. He wants to play political games here. He wants to embarrass the government. He wants to make them look bad. He wants to make them look like they're hiding something, and he's standing up for transparency. So yes, of course, he doesn't want to get into the tent. But I mean, it's not for any great reason. It's for a political reason. He wants to be able to still keep hammering away at the government, and it's I think really had its effect. But you know, I think it's worth paying attention to what Tom said. It is not okay. I mean, can't be acceptable in a free and democratic society to have politicians start throwing names out there of people who might potentially have done something wrong, and there has been no police investigation into it. There have been no charges laid. There's been no judgment made. That's you're really treading on dangerous ground here. So, you know, I understand the politics of why he doesn't want to do it. I understand the politics of why he says that they should come out and put these names out there so we can cast aspersions. But I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it would be fair to the people involved. But, you know, Trudeau got himself into this mess because he should never, ever have come out and accused the Indian government of doing something based on information provided by police forces before there was a thorough investigation, before it had even gone to court. And in fact, it may imperil any chance for a conviction of the two individuals who could be charged because the Prime Minister has poisoned the well with political comment.
Yeah, Tom, you compare and contrast when you consider which one of the opposition leaders has decided to actually look at that information. Jagmeet Singh has, and in essence, not to say that he has been silenced on it, but certainly no criticism from those benches right now or it's not as loud. Do you think that Trudeau is basically trying to bait Pierre Poilievre into making sure that he basically silences him on this.
Well, he did the same thing with Blanchette, the head of the Bloc Québécois, who stood up and asked some very legitimate questions. And I don't know what's in that report, obviously, or what names are there, but I'm ready to guess that nobody's paying anybody in the Bloc Québécois to hand over state secrets because they don't have any. So the Bloc Québécois got the same treatment in the House from the Liberals, which is, oh, well, look at you, you're talking about this. All you have to do is get into the tent and look at the secret stuff, and then you can't talk about it. And Blanchette was he was clear as a bell in his answer. He just shrugged his shoulders and said, come on, that's a game that you're trying to play with me because you know that would shut me down as the leader of an opposition party, and I won't go down that road. Now, Singh is in the tent with Trudeau, but he, in his first reactions anyway, from my recollection of it, seemed to be saying, hey, this is so serious, it has to be made public. But obviously, he's in a conflict of interest, and that's why the other two, both Blanchette of the Bloc and Poilievre of the Conservatives, are saying that's why we'll have none of it. So I think that we lose sight too easily of the core question here. What did the government know? When did it know it? And are there indeed Liberals involved? And if so, why did they do nothing about it? And that sends us right back to all the questions that were asked when Trudeau tried to hand this off to his special rapporteur, the excellent David Johnston, who got sullied in this whole mess because he tried to, in all honesty, do what he could. But Trudeau was playing a game, and he got caught up in it. Now it looks like Madame Justice Hogue, who's got a sterling reputation, by the way, here in the province of Quebec, where she's just been one of those great judges. And she's very frustrated right now. So this whole thing stinks. And the Liberals are not doing anything to make it better. Trudeau can be out of the country for a while, but he can't be out until the end of the session. He's going to have to come back and start getting better answers than he's given so far, Mike.